But all right, but yeah, but no, but we can continue with what do you say, the connection with Joy Ito and Digital Garage, and as well as the funding from Jeffrey Epstein. I think that's where we cut off.
So yeah, you basically had a situation where in 2017, Epstein came out and said that he believes, he did only one interview on this topic, but that coin is not a currency, that it's a store of value. And this wasn't a popular narrative at the time. But what we later find out is that Epstein invested not only in MIT Multimedia Lab and Joy Ito, but he also invested in Ito's personal funds as well. So it is conceivable that Epstein was funding SegWit and Lightning and MIT and their involvement with the Digital Currency Initiative and all three US CBDCs. We don't know for sure the tracking of the specific funding. Ito had to resign from MIT because of this. And we also know Bill Gates was involved in the funding of the Project Hamilton retail CBDC white.
I didn't know Project Hamilton. Yeah, no, Bill Gates is in this.
Bill Gates is in this too. No, it gets worse. There's no aspect of this. Once you look at this, it's okay. They killed peer-to-peer digital cash. Then they developed something at the same time that is now 1.7 million transactions per second. They used common developers. Gavin Andreessen, who Satoshi turned the keys to the Bitcoin get over to, was an early developer, I believe, on Project Hamilton. Corey Fields, who was a developer who worked on Lightning Network and SegWit, is a co-author of Project Hamilton. He's on the white paper. He's literally on the white paper. So there's actually no doubt as to whether or not there are overlapping devs. There's no doubt as to whether there's overlapping funding, and precisely the degree to which Epstein's money was earmarked for this, we don't know, but we do know that what Epstein's position was on Bitcoin as a store of value. And we do know that Epstein funded Joy Ito both at MIT and in his private ventures, which is what caused Ito to have to resign from MIT. So these things now are all known. Roger doesn't talk about this aspect of it in the book. Roger's focus is on what happened relative to Blockstream. But what's interesting about the Blockstream component of it is, so MIT funded the development after the Bitcoin Foundation disintegrated. But then after MIT, Blockstream stepped in and became the main funding source for Bitcoin developers. And now today, you have, in addition to Blockstream funding core devs, you have BlackRock funding some of the BTC core devs. Yeah. So this is a project that has been completely, in no way is it peer-to-peer digital cash. And in fact, most people are now buying Bitcoin through WEF partner companies like BlackRock, where they never take custody of it. And then BlackRock doesn't even have custody of it. So there are now two layers between somebody buying a Bitcoin ETF and the Bitcoin itself. And when you sell the ETF, you do not get paid in Bitcoin. When you sell your ownership of the ETF, you get currency. So this entire thing is a disaster because when they roll out CBDCs, we now don't have an alternative. We don't have something that can scale that's as easy to use. And people have been caught up in this narrative. If you think about it, all these new people that have been indoctrinated to Bitcoin in recent years, well, what have they been told? They've been told, don't cut your own hair. Save all of your money, put all of your money into buying Bitcoin, and then don't spend it. So basically, we've created a culture of people that don't innovate and that don't even use the currency, but yet they believe that in doing nothing, they're going to defeat all of the central banks and that somehow at the end of this entire process, we're going to have sound money. And that's not how innovation, competition, and technology works.
No, totally agree with you. I think to me, like this idea of hodling is like cultish. That's one of those cults where you sacrifice something. Oh, I forgot. There's some sort of like a psychological term. There's something that used like in cults and stuff. But I think what is interesting is most of these BTC maximalists who I talked to or whatever, they celebrated what is the BlackRock's ETFs, the Vanguards and all that stuff. But I felt like this hodling mentality or this digital gold narrative, it benefits a more like a particular group of people. But to me, it ignores like rest of humanity. I guess all this new term, the global south, because to me, like why would a regular Joe or Jane just put their money into BTC? Their transaction fees are high. It's supposed to be this electronic cash for the world. So it's just mind-boggling. So I don't know.
It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling from a freedom perspective, and this is one of the reasons that I like Roger from the first time I heard him talk in 2012. Is you know where Roger stands on this in terms of the importance of peer-to-peer digital cash for the world. 71% of the world makes less than $10 a week. So when people joke about, or when a BTC Maxi celebrates the fact that poor people can't afford the transaction fees, they're actually acting more elitist than a central bank. They're acting more elitist than the CEO of JP Morgan and Chase. They're sitting there literally cheering on the fact that now people in developing nations can't afford to buy and sell things. And to me, it's offensive and it's completely against what the white paper was about, what it's supposed to be about. And they've become a worse form of what it is they think they're actually replacing. Max Kaiser's behavior is worse than Jamie Dimon's behavior. And look, we've reached a point, honestly. So now we're in El Salvador. So now we're cheering on the fact that a dictator has implemented BTC as legal tender. But at the same time, what happened? Well, they regulated out and they banned all other crypto. And then the way that you use it is through a custodial solution, this Chivo wallet. So you don't have self-custody of your crypto. And to make matters worse, all 5 million people in El Salvador were doxxed because of a hack of the centralized Lightning wallet. So this is not freedom. This is a group of people. This is just a group of people that want to be the new banker elites. This is not a group of people that want a monetary revolution. This isn't a group of people that want sound money for the world. This is a group of people that look at central bankers with envy and say, I want to be that, as opposed to I want to disintermediate that. And that is the problem.
Yeah, no, totally agree, because a lot of the common arguments I would get over here, a lot of these, I think most of the people over here in Dubai or the MENA region, they just basically spout out the usual talking points from your usual crypto media or blockchain media like Cointelegraph and all that stuff. But also a lot of other TC Maxis. For example, Stoneways. I mean, him, and there's also this other guy, Brad something. But for example, I'll use Stoneways because I have met him and he's quite an interesting character. But, a lot of these guys pout, they just talk so much about the Lightning Network, but they don't really know the inner details, especially when it comes to the channels, connect the channels and stuff, and how one channel, if it cuts down, the whole thing shuts down. A lot of people can get screwed over. So they don't really understand the actual details, but they will say, okay, if someone wants to use Bitcoin for buying coffee, for example, use the Lightning Network. It's always that talking point. But ask them why. No one seems to answer that question. So I'm sure you might have come across those kind of talking points quite a lot.
I come across those talking points a lot. And again, so I live off of cryptocurrency. So a lot of the people talking about this are talking about this from a theoretical perspective because they're still using, Michael Saylor now even talks about, we went from Roger Ver talking about peer-to-peer digital cash for the world to Saylor saying, we're not going to compete with Visa. We're not going to compete with MasterCard. We're not going to compete with the euro. We're going to comply with KYC. We're not going to compete with the dollar. This is now the official store of value narrative. And the problem is that, I'll use whatever works. I'm not a particular coin maximalist. I believe the biggest single threat to human liberty is CBDCs. And I will use whatever combination of sound money alternatives will deliver the best chance of defeating CBDCs. So everybody immediately wants to say, oh, you're this coin versus this coin. I'm like, the entirety of crypto is about to lose if we don't actually come up with some effective solutions. So I've tried Lightning Network. And here's the problem with Lightning Network. The problem with Lightning Network is in order to actually open a payment channel, you still have to use the first layer, the L1. And it's still expensive to open a channel. You have to keep the channel open. And if you don't keep the channel open, then you have to pay to reopen the channel. But on top of that, there's this whole liquidity issue. So if I want to send my friend Bill money and the way that this works is you have to route through these different channels. And if I want to send him $100 and you're connected to him directly and I'm not, but you only have $50, then I actually can't go through you as the intermediary. So there's this whole entire liquidity problem, which means that in order for Lightning to work, you have to have centralized liquidity hubs. Here's the problem with centralized liquidity hubs. First of all, you've defeated the entire purpose of peer-to-peer cash, because once you have to have these large hubs with big liquidity, which tend to be institutional players, you now can be censored. But more importantly, and this has already happened in the United States, I can't use Lightning Network in the United States. I just gave a talk to 100 people in California. And if I wanted to onboard them to Lightning, so you imagine you're sitting in a room with 100 people, and now you're actually trying to walk through what the steps are. Go here, get Bitcoin, and then open a channel. But in the United States, because of anti-money laundering, laundering laws. The big players like Wallet of Satoshi and Exodus Wallet have exited the Lightning business for regulatory reasons. So all of the big liquidity hubs are already getting out of Lightning Network in the United States. So I can't use Lightning Network to buy a cup of coffee in the United States. And if we got into a situation, which is how they're going to roll out CBDCs in an emergency, where we have to onboard people quickly, Bitcoin still doesn't work. The same situation we had in 2017, where people all of a sudden found $50 transaction fees in 8 days to process. That has not been fixed. And we saw that with Ordinal's NFTs last year. And we saw this with the halving, where again, people were putting NFTs. So whenever the L1 becomes congested, that also increases the cost and delays with opening Lightning channels. So it is not a workable solution because it's not better than the traditional financial system. And it's still centralized. It solves no problem whatsoever. It doesn't have any of the benefits of what Bitcoin is supposed to be about. All it does is create a new layer of middlemen. So it is not a solution for a medium of exchange. And it's failed. And it's been 9 years.
Yeah. Now, it just reminded me, like, of just reading this book, Hijacking Bitcoin, just going to that memory lane. I think for me, I just cannot believe that there hasn't been much progress in Bitcoin at all. And that's why we have all these other blockchains, the cryptos, like whether it's Ethereum or, I don't know, Avalanche, now Solana. But so now we are at the stage where people are stuck with this Bitcoin as a digital gold. But to me, it's a surveillance cripple coin because I have issues with public blockchains and companies like Chain Analysis and all these other analytic companies, like they like track and trace and stuff. But I guess the question I got to ask you is there an opportunity for us to get regular Joes and Janes and businesses to start accepting crypto? I know we have Bitcoin Cash, maybe eCash, or maybe BSV, or because I think to me, I feel like entrepreneurs or businesses, I think they're the ones who could really drive crypto, help increase crypto adoption. I know, what's your take?
So I'm actually going to do a cast next week, and I'm calling it DEFCON 1, but I'm announcing a kind of a Manhattan project to build open source multi-coin, including tokenized gold and silver wallet, and an open source multi-coin gold and silver point of sale solution. Because when I go around the country and I'm trying to introduce people to this, again, it's you try to onboard people, 100 people in a room that are not technologically sophisticated, but yet, let's be honest. So in the United States, boomers have 43% of the wealth. They've been completely unaddressed. Most of the technology in crypto has been developed by 20-year-old men for 20-year-old men. The user experience on this stuff is horrible, right? So we need to build a user-friendly, absolutely simple to use wallet and a point of sale system, but it has to be open source so that it can't be shut down, where a company can't be shut down, so that it's not centralized in any way. And so I'm going to push for the creation of that, because if we don't build that, then we aren't going to win. And because I will tell you, so I've been using crypto since 2012, living off of it since 2019. And there are I've onboarded some merchants to crypto. And the problem is, like the point of sale systems that you introduce to people, most of them have gone under. And so you may get a business owner to be like, oh, cool, I'd like to take this crypto. And like they play around with it on their phone. It is that great. But then how do they train their employees, right? It's not a solution. It's a novelty, which is why when you go to a lot of these maps, they give you lists of places where you can use crypto. Actually, if you really go there, that's maybe if the owner is there. So we need but it has to be multi-coin. And the thing is, because people get angry about this, everybody loves their coin. There are some attributes to the coins that are important, right? It can't be a centralized proof of stake, because that doesn't actually solve a problem. And it's also a centralized point of failure. You don't want things that can be shut down as illegal security. So you're looking for proof of work or something related to that. You also have to factor in, what is the buying power of that coin? What is the market cap? Because there are people like, our transaction fees are zero. Yeah, great, but your market cap is $200,000. So if I'm going to a merchant located next to me, the chances of anybody having a wallet with your coin in it is zero. So we have to get a combination of coins that have a combination of not only market cap, but also we have to look at transaction processing capabilities. Visa and MasterCard can do 65,000 transactions per second at peak. That's not generally what they do. They generally do a couple thousand transactions per second. The US retail CBDC is at 1.7 million transactions per second. So whatever we cobble together together as a solution needs to be able to get us to somewhere moving closer to Visa and MasterCard levels. And today, just today, CoinCash moved to dynamic block sizing, which is a
Fabula.
huge deal. Monero, I've heard, can theoretically do 1,700 transactions per second. So I'm putting together an initial list. So when we build this thing out, we've got a half a dozen coins that combined can maybe do 5 to 10,000 transactions per second. Because when they roll out CBDC, understand they're going to do it in an emergency. This is how in the United States we got the Patriot Act after 9/11. This is how we got the bank bailout bill made after the financial collapse. This is how we got this 2.2 trillion CARES Act, which has caused a lot of this inflation in the United States. All these things get passed in an emergency. And there are so many global emergencies right now from an economic and geopolitical perspective that it's likely we're going to have an emergency. And Congress will pass a CBDC based on terrorism and money laundering, and it'll get support from both sides. So the only way we can win is if we actually have a solution that's better than the CBDC solution that they're rolling out. So this is what I'm saying. When I'm saying this is a Manhattan project, I've been talking to people from Monero, BCH, Ravencoin, multiple different projects, and I'm like, literally, let's get into a room. Let's spec this out. Let's get into a room with merchants. Let's get into a room with users. Let's design a spec for a minimum viable product. Let's have designers do the equivalent of a designing hackathon. And then let's have coders based on that minimum viable product, build it. And then let's launch this as an open source project. To me, this is the only shot that we have left, because we're not going to solve this politically. And people are not aware of just exactly how far behind we are relative to CBDCs.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you talked about this. I'm glad you're trying to focus merchants and also the kind of this open source POS system, because here in Dubai or in the MENA region, you have a lot of merchants, a lot of small businesses really. This was the region known for. It's known for trading, from pearl diving. Like I was born and raised in Dubai. We used to have our own business, import, exports and stuff. And also this region is also like a crossroads between Asia, Africa, Europe. There's a lot of trade, a lot of business opportunities taking place. And also now, in a sense, Dubai has also been one of the most popular Web3 places. You can almost say it's like a capital too. But the funny thing is that, like, in terms of retail adoption, not so much. It's more startups, Dubai version of Silicon Valley or something. But to get people to buy coffee and stuff, it's a rare thing, unless you have like a BitPay card or something like that. I love the idea. And I think because most of the people here, they see Bitcoin as a speculative asset. They're aware it's a currency, but there hasn't been a viable option for merchants to accept crypto as a payment, but also to be able to convert into fiat. So companies like BitPay does a great service, but I think they're mostly focused in North America. So hopefully something like this could come up. But if it's like an open source project like what you're planning to work on, man, I'd definitely love to support that idea, because I think that'll be really helpful for the people on the local level. So it's not just a bunch of associations and foundations and just the realm of techie people. And I love what you said earlier, right? 20-year-olds building tech for other 20-year-olds, but not for the general public. So I think that this kind of effort will really add great value.
Yeah, and part of this just comes out of experience. So I went to 20 states last year, and now I'm doing these workshops. And so you learn so much when you sit in a group with 100 people and you just do so. Somebody built a faucet for me for this last event, and which makes it as simple as it can be, right? So it's like they basically go to a website and they enter their address, and then boom, they get $5 worth of. But when you go through the process of, okay, you download a wallet, and then they have to go through the thing with the 12-word seed phrase and everything else, and I'm trying to use a multi-coin wallet, and you really start to try to explain the basics of everything that goes into this, it's really not simple. And then you realize that, and it's okay, this can be so much better and so much easier. And Venmo and traditional boomers are using Apple Pay. Boomers are using Google Pay. They're using Venmo, right? So it's not, so there's been almost like an arrogance or an elitism about, this is the thing I hate about Lightning, is whenever I'm interacting with somebody on Lightning and they say, I can get it to work, why don't you just run your own node or run your own channel? Okay, first of all, you shouldn't have to be technically competent to use money. It's a medium of exchange that people use to buy and sell things. If you've created this situation where you're now like an elite club because only you can use it, then you've lost the plot. And that's one of the things that I'm not a fan about with Lightning, but I think we can do this. But at least in the US, I'm trying to do my best to The reason I do a 4-hour workshop is most people, it's like you said, you weren't aware of all of the stuff going on with the CBDCs. When you see the full kind of 2-hour talk that I do on it, people walk away from it terrified because we're like in the late stages of something that they didn't even know existed. I think I saw a poll that 49% of Americans haven't even heard of CBDCs. And yet there's already, in the designs of CBDCs, they already have the idea of concepts like bail-ins and negative interest rates and being able to program what you can buy and what you can't buy. It's already baked into the concept of it. When you see the head of the Bank for International Settlements, he talks about the fact that it's about surveillance and about being able to track what people are buying and selling. In their own words, they're telling you this. It's not like I'm sitting here saying, oh, here's a conspiracy theory. I actually play videos of the head of the ECB, the head of the Bank for International Settlements, and people talking about it from the Federal Reserve, or quotes from people at the UN. And because what they're selling, their propaganda on this is it's all about financial inclusion and convenience. The truth is, if you were using something like Bitcoin the way it was supposed to be designed, it's permissionless. Anybody can use Bitcoin, but none of these CBDCs are permissionless. So it's absolutely not about financial inclusion. In the United States, there are a lot of people that live off of cash that are not banked at all. CBDCs are not going to help that situation. CBDCs are actually going to be used to terrorize these people. And trying to do everything that I can to both get the word out about what it really means to have a CBDC, the urgency of the fact that these things are really being implemented. But then I got caught up in the fact that we don't have a good solution. And as someone who's been living off of crypto since 2019, it has gotten worse for me. It's become more difficult for me. You mentioned something. You mentioned Bit, right? So I use, and if I'm honest about my own use, right, living off of crypto, a lot of it is buying gift cards and buying debit cards. That's not really, I mean, it's, yes, I'm not using my own bank, but that's not a peer-to-peer solution. That could be shut down in an instant. A piece of legislation so the next phase of what I'm working on, which is part of why we need to develop these open source tools, is I only want to buy from people that will start accepting peer-to-peer digital cash or gold or silver. I'm actually using, I don't know if you've ever seen these. Does this show up? Hold on, I've hidden myself just for bandwidth purposes.
But I know you had one of those, what do you say, those money notes, but it's actually gold. It's 0.1 ounce of gold.
Yeah, it's 1/1000th of an ounce of gold. Actually, they have them in different denominations. You can get all the way up to 1/50th of an ounce of gold.
Gotcha. And
so this is worth about $5 right now. So you can buy and sell things with actual physical gold. You can get actual physical silver in 1/10, 1/5 of an ounce. And so I'm for promoting all sound money alternatives, including those. And I think there's a good combination of all. So I'd like to include all of that in whatever solution that we have moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Because I think that kind of stuff I know would make sense in North America, but I don't know about this part of the world. But just to go back to especially here in Dubai too, with all the modern stuff too, majority of the population still uses cash quite a lot. And in terms of our Amazon and our local retail delivery, you can pay online, tap your card, or you can also pay by cash, like cash on deliveries. In this part of the world, if you go to other places like India and stuff, people still use cash quite a lot. But there is this drive or incentive to get people to use cards or the tap functionality much more often and stuff. It's still going to take some time. So but then again, I don't want to underestimate the drive of some of the bureaucrats or some of these public-private sector kind of folks who like to push all these digital initiatives. So let's put it that way. I'm sure they'll try to push their narrative, take advantage of the bring order out of chaos kind of situation. So I hope you catch my drift.
Yep. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah, no, no government wants to give up control of money. This is actually another part of this that's been frustrating for me with Bitcoin maxis in the United States, is that there's been a sense that they actually think they can work with Congress and that Congress wants to develop common sense legislation to allow crypto to flourish. And Congress derives its power from the power of the person by having monopoly control over money. Of course, they don't want peer-to-peer digital cash. Of course, they don't want something that competes with the entire source of their own power. So we are at a point where this is either or. This isn't CBDCs and crypto. It's either CBDCs or crypto. And I will tell you, so, I think I might have mentioned this, maybe it cut out. So we have this US retail CBDC called Project Hamilton, and this is essentially the replacement for cash. There was a second USC pilot called Project Cedar, which
Or
was the same group out of MIT, and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And it is what's called a wholesale CBDC. And so it's for banks communicating, transferring large amounts of value back and forth. It's used for cross-border payments. Then there's something called Regulated Liability Network. And this is one ledger that tracks CBDCs and all other digital assets that has multiple third parties able to track and monitor and censor those transactions. So in the future, you will have to register. So imagine tokenized equities. So tokenized equities would be on this regulated liability network tied into CBDCs, and then you could have the Federal Reserve and other people monitoring all of that. And so this regulated liability network concept, the idea behind it is there is no self-custody crypto that isn't registered using KYC AML. So it's a complete centralized system. There are other countries building their own regulated liability networks. So England is building a regulated liability network, and other countries are building regulated liability networks. And so the idea is that moving forward, you have these regulated liability networks connecting with each other, and you basically have all of the CBDCs and digital assets tracked globally through one common system. And so this is being built out, and this is the opposite of what anybody who liked the Bitcoin white paper would want to see in the world.
Yeah. Wow, man. Wow. I'm just like shocked, frustrated, just a lot of emotions, because I remember this other guy, his name was Hotep Jesus. I remember like last year or something, also some of the guys from eCash, they were talking about Project Hamilton, Project Aurum. I don't know if that's another CBDC thing, but this liability network thing, that's something else. I don't know, because to me, like, it gives me this one world government kind of vibes and stuff. I know to me it's like crazy bad news. We can't do anything about it. But I feel like, especially in this part of the world, because you have the faiths, right? You have Judaism, Islam, Christianity. I don't know. I think it's because like normally people obviously know about CBDCs or understand Bitcoin because they see it as a speculative asset. But I think a lot can't connect to this overreach of power. So I think there's a unique way of connecting with people and getting people to understand CBDC is bad news. It can lead to intended consequences. So yeah, I just want to share that out there. So just like connected to my part of the world.
And they're not unintended consequences. They're actually the intended consequences. That's the more important part. So if people have any confusion about whether or not these things are not about financial inclusion, they're intentionally designed surveillance, and they're designed for surveillance because in the end, these are going to be tied to a credit system that is based on carbon credits. And to give you one more example of that, when you look at these UN Sustainable Development Goals, they're working on developing a new global new dietary guidelines. It's called the Lancet diet. And in this Lancet diet, you can't eat red. You can have a very small amount of red meat. They are actually adding insect protein sources as a significant source of protein. They've even added sugar into the diet. But when you read about what the diet is all about, the diet is not about optimizing human health. They are balancing the other sustainable development goals. So they are considering, when they design the dietary guidelines, the carbon output. So the reason you can't have meat is because cows produce methane, and this methane negatively impacts the atmosphere. So the dietary guidelines are not about our health. The dietary guidelines are about this closed system, this view of the world based on scarcity and based on fear around carbon. And they actually want to drive all of our behavioral choices around their limited worldview of this threat, and that only they are the ones that are able to come up with a top-down solution to address the threat. People have to understand that, because if you don't understand that, then things look like doesn't make sense when you see what's happening. You look at it as a one-off. Oh, of course they're digitizing money, make it more efficient. But that's not what this is about. It's about control. And it's in my book, I document that it is about control.
Okay, yeah. No, but it's funny when you mention about trying to reduce red meat and stuff, because the way I see it is, okay, maybe they're able to pull that kind of crap, like maybe say in the United States or maybe Western Europe or something. But here in the Middle East, they love their shawarmas, they love Turkish food and stuff. It's meat heavy. I don't know. It's going to be a tough fight. But then again, I don't know, especially for the regular people, I don't think they're going to buy that. But some of that, but who knows? Maybe with a little bit of brainwashing here and there, people buy into some of the UN sustainability goal stuff, which I looked into it. To me, it's like a bunch of nonsense. And I And to go back to when you talk about like MasterCard, like my partner, she used to work with, so they were doing the marketing for MasterCard and stuff. But it's not hitting up this region, but it's more of a concept in Europe. But then again, whatever happens in America, especially culturally, the ideas it gets transferred to other places as well. A little bit concerning, but I don't know. But around local level, like most people will not let go of their meat and stuff. They'll be like, screw the white liberal guy or something, whatever. So I don't know, but
yeah, I would have thought that until COVID tyranny happened and we saw lockdowns, and I would have thought that, but then we saw what's happening to Dutch farmers. We're seeing what's happening with farmland all over
it's
the world.
happening now.
It's absolutely happening now. Don't discount this, because they are killing cows. They are driving farmers off of their land. This is something that's happening now. And when you dig into this, is where those 5 organizations, the UN, WEF, World Bank, et cetera, play into this. I actually wrote a short article on this. The United States has been funding the WEF through the State Department for agricultural programs. So basically what they've been doing to Dutch farmers, they're trying to institutionalize as agricultural policy when they go into developing nations. So you can't underestimate how coordinated this is at a global level. So on the one hand, you've got what the Dutch government is doing, but then they're trying to make that the standard agricultural policy for countries in Africa, countries in South America, and so forth. And so I guess what I worry about with this is that people are complacent, not realizing that how much the surveillance state has grown. I talked about China having 600 million surveillance cameras. In the United States, our pictures are taken 85 times a day, above and beyond, through security cameras, above and beyond whatever pictures we take of ourselves. We're putting surveillance infrastructure in. The contact tracing apps that were put in place under COVID. So basically, you now have a wireless token that's tracking your movement. That was all put in place under supposed health emergencies. And now you have this WHO pandemic treaty, which they've even stated that they can use climate emergency as a threat to health. So if you have this World Health Organization pandemic treaty, and then they declare a climate emergency, now all of a sudden you have a bunch of countries that have given up their sovereignty, and they can push tyranny through that direction. So they are much more sophisticated. People tend to think that it's like, oh, it's the government, they're stupid. It's actually not the government pushing this. It's large corporations that benefit from having this closed system, this like carbon-based system. If you get in on that early and you put in a bunch of regulatory barriers, then you're going to be the one that comes out ahead, which is why MasterCard is working with all these other companies, and people are so eager to do all of this, because if they're in first, they're going to own a lion's share of the economy coming out of it.
Yeah, now when I think about it, I shouldn't downplay it and stuff, because now I recall like here in Dubai too, because like just Las Vegas, we have a lot of these big events and stuff, like the UAE and stuff. They have hosted like World Government Summit and some other stuff. Thank you for reminding me. I remember sometimes some people just don't think ahead or something. They will buy into the financial inclusion narrative and the sustainability stuff, but they don't see the the control and whatever control and conquer protocol they have. But anyways, I know you covered quite a bit on Bitcoin, CBDCs. But the good news, I think what I take from this is there are people like you and also others as well who are questioning the narrative and who are coming up with, I would like to call it conscious individual solutions that can solve unconscious collectivist problems. That's how I see it. So I love the idea of the POS system and facilitating like a multi-coin options for people to use. Other than that, you do give workshops in the United States. Any plans to give workshops like outside the United States, maybe?
So eventually I want to do a few more of them to work out the kinks, because there's so much material that's packed into the 4 hours. I want to work through some of the language and everything. I'm going to make an online version available at some point, and I'm certainly open to doing these workshops globally. The reason I'm focusing on the United States is I believe that there is a chance that they will try to implement CBDCs before the presidential election this year. So from my perspective, this isn't an all or nothing. This is an all or nothing situation. Again, I know I sound alarmist. I'm sounding alarmist for a reason, because I don't want this to be. Sure. We saw COVID coming, and I didn't shout loudly enough. I did a series of videos on, hey, use these decentralized tools. You're going to be censored and everything else. And I feel like I didn't warn enough people. This is one of those things where this is, when you consider right now that there are only 4 exchanges left in the United States, they're all being sued by the SEC. They have all tightened their KYC AML. The IRS is requiring you to report all of your self-custody crypto. The FBI has come out and said, if you purchase crypto from a service that wasn't a registered money emitter and you bought from a pool that had coins that were involved in illegal activity, your coins can be clawed back and confiscated. We are in a situation where Roger Ver is in prison for something related to a 7 to 10-year-old tax situation to silence his speech. We're in a situation where my friend Ian was just sentenced to prison for selling Bitcoin without a license. Local Bitcoin has been shut down in the United States. So it's harder now to even buy crypto in person. The coin mixing services have been shut down. People have been arrested. So if you actually look at it, there's not much left for them to do. What's left for them to do is to ban privacy coins and then to just outright ban. That's all that's left. So they've already done 90% of the damage. And once you understand through this executive order that they want to do a CBDC, you understand that they have to shut off crypto. So they're accelerating shutting off crypto. Why? So that they can roll out a CBDC. So from my perspective, it may not happen this year, but I'm going to assume that it might happen this year and do everything that I can to warn people here. And then I hope I'm wrong on that, because if I am wrong, like even if I notify people, are we going to be able to get people onboarded with these new point of sale systems and wallets fast enough to be an alternative? It's a tough order given that it's May and the election is in November. So this is an incredibly serious situation. And people should consider, even outside of the United States, what the impact of this is going to be in the United States. And I will add one other thing. I believe these ETFs are part of this plan to demoralize crypto, because it is going to be very easy for them to confiscate Bitcoin that is in a coin ETF. In the 1930s, President Franklin Roosevelt, he confiscated gold. And if you had gold in a vault or a safety deposit box, they just took it. If you had gold in your own self-custody, while you were obligated to turn it in, people didn't. So some people held on to 25% of their gold. If you read the risk factors in the BlackRock and other ETFs, they have confiscation there as a risk. So the government could decide, we're banning Bitcoin. And some people are going to say, I've got my keys. Okay, have you thought through what the market is really going to look like if BlackRock is seized, Fidelity is seized, and now all of a sudden there are criminal penalties if you use knowing that through chain analysis, almost no one has anonymous Bitcoin. Realistically, people that I know, like Roger Ver and Ian, people that are OGs, that are smart, that actually sought to follow the rules, even they didn't have de-identified Bitcoin. So people aren't thinking through what actually happens if the crackdown really continues. But once you understand that this is a situation where it's either CBDC or crypto, then it puts in perspective how urgent the situation is.
No, totally agree. No, because over here I have to remind people, because I work for a couple of exchanges and stuff. I have to remind people Bitcoin is not equivalent to another Bitcoin, because the exchanges, they have their own classification of blacklisted Bitcoins and other Bitcoins because of chain analysis and other analytic companies and stuff. And then Bitcoin can be tied to your ID. So if that happens, it just makes things difficult. That's why I'm not really big into Bitcoin Core, especially. So that's why I favor privacy coins, and I do believe privacy is normal. But I think that's a long road ahead. But I'm willing to be a voice over here. And I think slowly people are I think they need more time to process it, because it is a lot of information, and plus also you got to kill some of the other people's their sacred cows and stuff when it comes to their history of money, and also some Bitcoin history as well too. So I know, but that's a whole nother.
I know. I know, and the problem with this is we actually don't have time. This is the biggest challenge that I have, because I know I throw a lot of information out there, and it's, oh my God, this is going to be a hard. People are not going to want to hear this. The problem is, if we've been Bitcoin has been complacent for 15 years, and the world has caught up. So now, from a strictly competitive perspective, if people put their entrepreneur hat on and got out of the bubble of being just within crypto and said, what's going on with money? What is the competitive dynamic with money globally, looking at the existing traditional players, what's going on with CBDC, and then what's going on with crypto, people would be horrified, because you would realize that you're actually getting crushed when people have some conceived notion that somehow they're winning, right? It's people say to me, well, BTC's already won in the marketplace. Again, let's put this in perspective. Less than 5% of people on the planet have crypto. Most of those people don't use it as currency. It has 1/2 of the market cap of Apple, and it has less than 2 times the market value of frequent flyer point. It's insignificant globally. So it may be bigger than the next closest. They may be able to say, we have a bigger market cap than you, and this is basically rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. It is completely meaningless in an overall global competitive landscape. Anyway, I hope we wake people up. I hope I'm wrong on the timing. But there really does need to be a sense of urgency around this, because you're not going to unwind once they're put in place.
No, totally agree. Totally agree with you. No, because I'm glad. So, Aaron, I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because there are also other people too here. I guess who are more who have longevity in the space, so they understand some of the history, and also there's some of the people here who have been working in the space. They do see CBDCs as a big no. So I guess for me, I'm trying my best to get people to use blockchain solutions for their everyday life, whether it be transactions or whether it be, or something like just to be familiar with the space. But I think like the CBDC part is something we need to talk about. And one good news I would love to share with you is hopefully in October, one of the guys who I know from eCash, he wanted to organize an electronic cash conference here in Dubai to talk about peer-to-peer cash transactions and stuff. So he wants to invite people from Bitcoin Cash, get some BTC maximalists also, maybe Monero people too. So hopefully we could have these conversations about CBDCs and stuff. And so it'll be in a university campus here in Dubai. People here are hungry, and good thing is people are open about it, so they want to learn more. I hope I can pull that off. So I'll definitely love to get some material, some knowledge. Maybe I'll try to get that book from you with regards to CBDCs. So try to make that happen.
That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. But anyways, I know, Aaron, I just realized we're taking much of your time. So before you go and continue your great work, how can people reach out to you, learn more from you?
The best way to reach me is through my website, day2024.com, and you can learn about, there's links to the books, links to my interviews, workshops, all of that other stuff, and on Twitter at Aaron R. Day. And I will say, I'm doing a bit of a fundraiser. There's an event happening in Washington, D.C. next Friday at the Libertarian Party Convention. It's an Enemies of the State party where we're honoring Roger Ver, Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, Ross Ulbricht, and Ian Freeman. And I'm actually doing the part about Roger. So we're passing out Bitcoin Cash to all the attendees. I'm going to be there selling, hijacking, and doing a little 10-minute talk. So if people want to contribute to that, that's fine. That's also at the Day 2024 thing. But there's supposed to be as many as 700 people at this event. So I'm hoping, including many from the media. So I'm hoping that we can elevate Roger's situation as well as his message from hijacking, but as well as do what he would do if he were not in prison, which is continue to spread peer-to-peer digital cash to the world.
That's awesome. No, definitely I'll put the links below, and also share to some of the people here as much as I can. But Aaron, I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad we got to do this. And most importantly, thank you for your service to the space. I think it's really valuable. We really need it. So thank you so much.
Thank you for doing this. And I look forward to talking again, and hopefully we'll meet in person someday.